there are some troops that everyone seems to love, and there are some troops that everyone seems to hate. However, there are many troops that kind of fly under the radar, and while most of them are mediocre, you have one troop that really doesn't seem to get the recognition it deserved, and that is the Electro Titan. And today, I just want to go over this troop and look at how she has progressed over the years, and also look at why people don't really seem to talk about her, despite her being one of the most used troops in the game. The Electro Titan was added in October of 2022 with the Town Hall 15 update, and already from the beginning, there were a couple of things that would make people less likely to talk about the Electro Titan. First of all, you had all of these comments under the Reddit post that announced the Electro Titan, and this already would disassociate the Electro Titan from gameplay discussions because people were clearly focused on something else, and even Darian couldn't take these comments, and I think this is something that does kind of contribute towards the Electro Titan not being talked about as often anymore because that was the original trend, and it would die out pretty quickly, and it would lead to people not really talking about the Electro Titan even though they still used her in attacks because she was honestly really good and also kind of unique. The main thing that made her stand out was her aura ability, as she was the second troop in the game to have an aura after the Apprentice Warden, and with her aura she would constantly do damage to any buildings and enemy troops, which was something that could be very powerful with a couple of Electro Titans, because when you add it up, that is a pretty good amount of damage on top of her normal attack, where she just does a decent amount of damage with a short range attack. And what really makes her stand out is the fact that she has a ton of health, and this gives her a really good balance of health and damage, and in many cases people would replace tanky troops in favor of the Electro Titan because she could tank along with doing good damage, and overall you would see her become popular in charge attacks because that is really what she was designed for, and the main thing that prevented her from being like overpowered was the fact that she took up 32 housing space, which is definitely a considerable amount, and it was Supercell's way of balancing her, and it also would force players to be more tactical because you didn't have enough Electro Titans to just spam down, and this is why the Electro Titans didn't really pick up that fast within the casual player base. However, this does bring me to the next thing that made the Electro Titans underappreciated, and that would be the release of the Root Riders with the Town Hall 16 update. The reason the Root Riders affect the Electro Titans is because they are actually pretty similar troops, as they both have high health and do decent damage, and are useful in charge attacks. However, the Root Rider has two main things that would basically make it a lot more attractive, and those would be its ability to go through walls and the fact that it only took up 20 housing space, because that would make it so you could actually just fill your army with them and spam them down, and you would have a good chance of doing pretty good on the attack. This is what would make the Root Riders just take over the game and basically overshadow every single troop in the game, except for the Valkyries, which actually got super popular because of this due to how well they worked with the Root Riders. But outside of that, the Root Riders had overshadowed the other troops in the game, including the Electro Titan, and this isn't that surprising considering over 80% of attacks at the top Town Hall levels use the Root Riders. This would shift everyone's attention over to the Root Rider for a pretty long time, to be honest, and even to this day the Root Rider is the most popular troop at the higher Town Hall levels, though we definitely have seen the Dragons and Electro Titans come back into the mix as the next most popular troops. And another thing to mention is that you would see the rise of the Electro Titans and Root Rider strategy, where these would basically be the two main troops in the army, and this worked really well because these troops were already similar, and them together just would be super strong as well. But on top of that, you would see more of the normal Electro Titan armies coming back and becoming more common. However, this entire time you still didn't really see people talking about the Electro Titan all that often, and that is uncommon because normally you would see troops becoming a lot more talked about if they became a lot more used than before, kind of like what you saw with the Valkyries when they regained popularity with the Root Riders. However, there is an explanation for this. The explanation for why the Electro Titan didn't get talked about even when she became more popular again really comes down to a few key factors that I think are pretty interesting when you really think about it. First of all, the Electro Titan had already established herself as this kind of troop that people just used without really making a big deal about it, and once that perception gets set in the community, it's really hard to break out of that mold even when the troop starts performing really well again. And the more important thing is really just the fact that the Electro Titan never changed during this time. It didn't get any balance changes or anything, and it was the same troop it had been since before the Root Rider was added, so it's not like there were any direct factors involved, as everything that caused any sort of decline or rise in usage wasn't directly related to the Electro Titan or anything. Another reason as for why the Electro Titan isn't that talked about is because the game is honestly just super busy, and that makes people have to constantly focus on other things, so they are less likely to talk about or care about older things versus newer things. This year has been super eventful with a lot of limited time events that constantly add new things to the game, and especially new troops that are here for a limited amount of time, and this is also just another thing that distracts people from talking about the normal troops in the game, as they will be testing new armies using the limited time troops, and this does make it harder for people to really talk about older troops. And it also may be a reason as for why the Electro Titan is underappreciated, because the bar gets set pretty high with a lot of these super strong event troops, and that just makes the Electro Titan seem not as good, especially when you also consider the Root Rider, and we had talked about that earlier in the video. Despite the Electro Titan being super good, it just isn't as easy to use as the Root Riders, and that means a casual audience generally leans towards the Root Riders, and they simply don't appreciate the Electro Titan because they just see it as not being as good, and with the casual player base being the biggest in the game, you can see how the Electro Titans seem underappreciated. And another comparison these players make is with the Electro Dragon, because both of these troops have Electro in the name, but the Electro Dragon is clearly a lot easier to use. So even in that comparison, the Titan is seen as being worse because it is more complicated to use and not as easy, even if it is more powerful. And overall, I think you can see how the casual player base is to blame for the Electro Titan being underappreciated, and you do see this happen with quite a few troops in the game that are good, but just not as simple to use. In the more serious and competitive community, the Electro Titan is probably one of the most respected troops, but outside of that, people don't really see it as being that good. However, as of recently, we have been seeing the Electro Titan become more recognized and more popular, so it does seem like the sentiment is changing slowly, and I really do hope more people are able to see just how strong the Electro Titan is and how it can be really powerful and well thought out attacks. I definitely see this troop becoming more and more popular in the next few months, and I think there will be a point where it seems like everyone is using the Electro Titan, especially if the Root Riders end up getting nerfed more, because then the Electro Titans would be like the troop people look towards. I really think this troop is really well balanced, and I doubt we will see it get any balance changes anytime soon, and I would just love to see it become more recognized and more popular. But let me know down below in the comments how you guys feel about the Electro Titan and if you agree that it is underappreciated. But with that, we are at the end of the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one.